Due to this special call regular meeting a week earlier tonight, and as well as those you may be joining us on social media. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please note all board members and the superintendent are present. If you would join me just for a moment of silence. Thank you very much. If you're able, would you please stand and say the pledge to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Next order of business is to adopt the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion, we adopt the agenda.
Mr. McQuarrie made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Hurst made a second. All in favor, please let me know by lifting hand. All board members were in favor. The agenda is adopted. And item 2 is communications. We don't have any recognitions tonight. Item B is site-based decision-making minutes. I hope that each board members had a chance to look over those. Item C is audience comments. No one signed up for that. And item D is board member comments. And I'd like to share, I sent a text to all the board members and asked if you would write one or more goals for our district this coming year. Mr. Stull responded, and I think all of you have a copy of this. He sets some goals for each of the 7 standards. And next week, we hope to be able to call a special call board meeting to go over some of our construction things to get approval from board so we can move forward. And I thought that might be a good time for us to work on setting goals. And I asked that if we could, that we would pick out at least 4 of these goals, and Mr. Stowe, once they're in place, would report to the board on the progress of those 4 goals each month. So I think most of us in our discussions prior to the meeting, Monday or Tuesday, Dr. Lamb has got to check her schedule, and she's going to let me know tomorrow morning. So if that's okay, once I find out, I'll get with you.
Yes, sir.
And we'll do it that way. Any other board member? Have anything else? All righty. Next is superintendent, and I believe you're going to give us have some production updates for us.
So if Brad will share with you some of the information relative to receiving some good news this week and last week, and then if you have questions about that, we'll address those. And as Dr. Browning said, next week we'll be asking you to make some decisions based on some of these things.
So as you were informed at the last board meeting, we were still working through some negotiations on some right-of-way issues at the high school site. We've come to some agreements with the other parties involved. That was concessions on our end as far as locations, sizing. We had to make some modifications to the overall site plan that you've been presented thus far, but it got us to the point that we are 95% there of what we have shown you up to this point. We feel comfortable that it's a way forward with the projects, and we can get back on our schedule and get you out to bid. We are meeting with Superintendent Stool. I've asked him to have AD there, and folks from, say, baseball, softball would be ideal because they're going to be the ones impacted. And I'll just briefly lay out to you, we're looking at some overall reduced field sizes for baseball and softball from what we had proposed. what we had proposed was the full extent of what a KHSAA field is, and which is larger than what you currently play on. So we're reducing those field sizes to stay out of those right of ways, but they're still going to be at the same size you got or larger than you currently have. They just won't be as large as we had initially proposed. So we've made some concessions there. There's been some discussion about the bus garage that we want to walk through with y'all at these next few meetings about its new location, possible location. But we're at the point that if we can kind of get an overall sign off from the stakeholders, those teams particularly, then we see a way forward that we can start getting our drawing sets back on track to get y'all to a bid point for our earthwork package, get earthwork moving this fall. We've met with our consultants, trying to keep them on track and pull them back in to the loop. Once we have this meeting, I think we've set it up for Tuesday afternoon. I've got another meeting set up for Thursday to bring everybody to the table from my consultant side to see what their schedules are and where we can fit this back in, just like anybody else's day, because we've been delayed now 8 weeks working through this. They've had other projects come into the line, so I've got to now slide our project into their schedule, get everybody on board, and then I'll be able to determine when we can set our bid date from there. And when I have that, I'll be able to report back to you where we're at as far as our estimated bid date. But I'm realistically saying we're 8 weeks behind. I think we can cut a few weeks off of that and be out hopefully into July, first middle of August, if we can pull everybody together. So it's good news. With everything else that's going on, we want to be able to get you to bid, get you some prices, and see where we're at. We are also taking in a lot of consideration to what the bid markets are doing. We got some prices back on our own projects. We see things are coming in significantly higher than what we or anybody else would have been. We started this project off planning significantly higher budgets so that we wouldn't be as surprised. But we are also starting to look conservatively at the project and what can we make optional in the projects and give you options so that when it goes to bid, if it comes in under budget, then we can start pulling this and that, this in, but you get the core project regardless. And then there's going to be some what we call alternates that will allow you to add to the project or to withhold from the project so that it hits the budget number you as a board feel comfortable with. And that's our ultimate goal. So we want to give you as many options as we possibly can so that you feel comfortable with whatever project you decide to proceed with. Again, right now we're talking primarily about the site development package. It's pretty straightforward, but as we get into the buildings themselves, you'll see a significant amount of options coming forward. We'll cover that in great detail over the next couple of months. But as far as good news report goes, is we see a path forward that we didn't see for them. So I want to thank y'all and your work with reaching out to your community stakeholders. That was a big part of the teamwork. Trace Creek pulled in some community stakeholders that they had, and we were able to find a path forward that wasn't a detriment to the project. So thank y'all.
Brent, I've had some folks ask me when we expect to see dirt in them. If any of those are watching, what would you?
That's where I think we'll be going. I would say bid at this point, optimistically, is mid-August. Getting everything secured, y'all's approval. I think y'all would be willing to call a special meeting if we needed it. I think we could see dirt realistically start moving around October. And then which we had planned to bid July, start moving dirt late August, September. So that's the impact that we've had. So it's not bad. It's still a lot of time to move a lot of dirt. If we can get us a good contractor in here, they can have the majority of the earthwork done before before the weather gets so bad that they can't work. Because we're gonna basically, from what we've seen from your site, we're gonna scrape the dirt, and we're gonna be setting on rock. We can work on rock all winter long, getting it out of here. There's a lot of it to get out. So,
George County has raw.
just a smidge. Or maybe you have a little bit of dirt on top of your rock. I don't know how, But yes, so overall timeline, big picture, I think we'll be able to make it up. I think we'll still have our 24 open dates. I don't think that's going to change. I just think we have to confine in and target in on what our contractors are doing instead of having the 4 to 5 months lead time between when we did the first package and the second package. We're now down to about a 3-month lead time, which is not a bad thing. Package 2, which is the buildings themselves, isn't behind schedule. It's just a matter of we don't want to bid it too soon. We've got contractors over the top of each other. So it'll be sitting there ready to go the minute they tell me it's ready to, we're ready to introduce new contractors to the project. So I feel good about it. But that's where, we're looking at it from the budget perspective. The earthwork package, there's not a lot of money to be saved in it. It is what it is. We've made some concessions. Just in, simple thing that we did was we compared the cost of raising the grandstands an additional 2 feet in height. So we've raised them up 2 feet in height, and that allowed us to not have to remove 2 feet of rock for the football field. That makes sense. So the size of the football field, taking out rock, that equates to about $700,000 in savings that we could then adjust to cover some of the other things that we're seeing where prices are increasing. Had you not been told about it, you probably never noticed that we didn't plan to do that. But we had initially planned to bring everything down to the same level, and we're making those concessions where we can to give you something that is very, very nice, but also budget minded. So those are the little things that we can do like that to keep us on target. So, any other questions?
You mentioned meetings next week on Tuesday and Thursday.
Mhm.
And we're talking about meeting on Monday or Tuesday. Is that gonna impact?
I'm looking.
And not, but
Two
it's
different
the
things.
it is two different things, but anything being discussed during those meetings, do we need to act on? So
At this
No.
point, no.
Okay.
What our plan is going to be is we'll take the discussion we have from those stakeholders. If they feel comfortable with the modifications we're having to make to the fields, and, yes, it ultimately is a board decision, but at this point in the design, we need to hear from the people who are actually using the fields. So let's hear from those teams. If they'll sign off on that, this is what we need to do, and we've got some options we're gonna talk with them about. We're gonna go back, we've got to redesign what that master plan looks like, and then we're gonna plan to bring that back to y'all for approval. And that's when you'll get your voice into what that is. You ultimately have the say in the approval of that, but right now we need to have those meetings with those local stakeholders, figure out who's impacted and how we can make it the best possible resource for them. So it doesn't impact your.
Okay, just want clarification there.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Thank you, Brad. Appreciate it. Sounds good. Phil?
So every month we provide you the personnel changes since the last board meeting, and that's available to you. I'm sure some of you had a chance to look at that. If you haven't, would encourage you to do so.
And reports, item A is treasurer's report. Each board member has met with Mr. Stull, I believe, and our treasurer, Ms. Coffee. And item B is a bond potential update.
So again, we provide this on a monthly basis with the help of Garrard Financial. And this month, we saw an increase of your bonding capacity back to 41 0.4 million because of the reduced interest rate. And so we'll just continue to provide that as an update on a monthly basis.
Okay, and item C is bills as presented.
You all see those on a weekly basis, and then we provide those as the sum total. We posted those today, so it's as current as it can possibly be.
Thank you, sir. Item 4 is a consent agenda, and compared to the last few meetings, it is very short. And unless any board member has any item in the consent agenda they want to pull out or have a question on, do I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
I move that we adopt the consent agenda.
Ms. Davis made the motion, we have a second.
Second.
Mr. Hart seconded. Any comments or questions or discussion? All in favor, let me know by lifting hand. Okay, all board members were in favor. The consent agenda is adopted. Now, item 5 is the action agenda, and item A is to approve the House Bill 8 resolution. And I am required to read this to you before we ask for a motion. And it says, whereas on April 8, 2022, Governor Andy Beshear signed 2022 regular session House Bill 678, hereinafter is HB 678, into law, making it effective immediately at that time pursuant to the emergency clause in section 8 of the bill. And whereas HB 678 provides great flexibilities to local boards of education relating to funding, financing, design, construction, renovation, or modification of the district's facilities and other facilities related matters, notwithstanding certain requirements for obtaining the prior approval of the Kentucky Department of Education or the Kentucky Board of Education as stated in various statutes and administrative regulations. And whereas the provision of HB 678 generally applied from April 8, 2022 until June 30, 2024, and also apply retroactively to submissions and requests that have been made by local boards prior to the effective date of the act, but that have not yet received approval from the appropriate board official. And whereas House Bill 678 requires a local board that elects to conduct its projects under the provisions of the bill to adopt a resolution by majority vote and submit the resolution to the Kentucky Department of Education as noticed. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Garrard County Board of Education. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Or we have a motion by Mr. Hart. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Hold just a second. Ms. Davis seconded. Do I have any comments or questions?
I have some questions
Okay.
about it. I tried to read the details of the House Bill 678 to understand them. It's pretty complex, so I'm not sure how this affects our district's facilities plan, so that's what my questions are about. The district facility plan that we currently have already has KDE approval, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
And on that plan, what was the original performance gym seating capacity that was approved by KDE?
I'd have to go back and look to be sure, but it was probably around
So I'm
1,500,
thinking 1,500.
somewhere in that vicinity.
And the seating capacity for our new facility that we're proposed to begin is,
Y'all asked for 3,000 to 3,500, so we've said close to 3,000.
When it comes to a local board, how large it's going to be.
yeah, that piece has not been settled. So at this
Yes.
point, the piece that is settled is on the current KDE approved at 1,500. But we have a project proposal to move that to 3,000 to 3,500. So if we adopt this resolution, do we still need to go back to KDE to get approval to modify our seating capacity in our performance gym? Or are we still held to the 1,500?
So you are not required to go back to KDE if you approve this resolution. Your facilities plan no longer has to govern your decision-making, and this board would be able to make a determination. Without House Bill 678, if you wanted something larger than 1,500, you would have to go to KDE and obtain permission. House Bill 678 allows this board to make a decision about what process you would like to follow, what numbers you'd like to have. And it also allows you to make decisions outside of the facilities plan that currently exists and does have approval. Ultimately, what it does, if I was trying to simplify it, would be to say that KDE is being removed from the process and the board is allowed to make a decision based on a couple of checkpoints. Those two checkpoints would be your fiscal agent, who could determine whether or not you had the financial resources to accomplish what you needed to accomplish, and then your architect, who would help you determine whether or not you can meet that goal based on what the bid process is. In the past, you would have been forwarding that information on to KDE as a third checkpoint. So once this came, we checked with both of those entities, but then I also checked with your board attorney to make sure that your board attorney felt comfortable advising this board that this was a positive decision and not necessarily a negative decision. His response is that he felt that this was a good decision for you all to make, but to be aware that that meant that you were accepting more responsibility because you've lost a checkpoint.
Yeah, and the 1,500 that the KDE did approve on the current approved facilities plan is based on the size of the district. Am I right about that? Enrollment and size of the district is what determines what they approve.
So, if, may
Go
I,
ahead. That's,
they, on your current facility plan, and as a standard for KD, they don't set a seating capacity. They set a square footage that you're allowed, and that is derived from the model program, which is based on your estimated attendance or your average daily attendance. Your facility plan was drafted at the time that Garrard County was a growth district. So they allowed you to design and build a high school that had public spaces, gymnasiums, cafeterias, main halls. All of that was designed for a school of 1,000 students. Even though you're a school of 750, all those spaces were designed for that. So that's where that number comes from. What they also allow is the district to have what they call locally designated space. Every program has that, and it allows the district to say, we want a facility that is larger than the model program. So you have a set number of square footage that KDE allows that you can take and add that to a program such as the gymnasium or the auditorium, the things that your base, what the model program, the basic standard, if you think about that's what a model program is, it says they must meet at least this minimum criteria. But if I've got a district who has a thriving performing arts center in Monroe County, in essence, they chose to use their model program, locally identified space, to make a bigger facility than what KDE said they could do under the model program. And that's what you're essentially doing here with the gymnasium. You said our community wants, as a board, a larger gymnasium. So you're using that additional locally identified program space to add to that minimum requirement for a high school gymnasium. And that's what that is, a minimum requirement.
And prior to this resolution, we would have had to have taken that decision back to the KDE for approval to progress forward.
Yes.
But if we adopt the resolution, we no longer have to go back to the KDE to seek their approval to do that. We can just say, as a board, that's what we want to do. We're going
As
to
a
do.
board, that's what this would allow you to do.
Why stop at 3,000? Why not go to 5? There's nothing to stop us, right?
so
That's
so
what
there
we're-
is, there are two other points that would stop you. The financial capability of doing it and
We've got
the
the
design.
capability, we just have to change our facility.
the design. Well, you wouldn't have to change your facility plan. You could just make that decision. But what I'm suggesting is that if you're looking at any of the other projects that could go along with it, your financial capabilities would be the stopping point for any project. So if you went to the baseball facility and decided to make it a 2,000 seat stadium, that would then be a financial challenge to you, and that would be one of the stopping points. So I think when and you were correct when you said there's been no formal approval of a size. I think that what they have worked from is a hoped for idea to try to make sure there was a location for not only athletic purposes, but for graduation purposes and things of that nature. So that's where those numbers came from, and that's what that was derived from. So you still have, in addition to what the board does, you still have checkpoints based on finances and based on the recommendations that come from the architect. My suspicion, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, is we turned around and said we wanted a 5,000 seat gym, that there would be some pushback from them as that not being an intelligent decision on our part. That would be my guess.
Yeah, it's in the same sense, I think last month I told you that, and we have derived the 3,000 to 3,500 from the very interview that y'all had us give to you. That was one of the criteria that you wanted to discuss in your interview. That's where that number came from. That's why we've used that number. In the last conversation we had, I think I pointed out last month, your seating capacity, your building code seating capacity isn't at 3,000. It's at 2,700 and change. The building is capable of holding 3,000. If you want to fill the floor, it's capable of holding almost 3,900. Our means of egress, our exits, they're all designed around those larger numbers. But if you wanted to say, here is a seat, and every seat is numbered, we're 2,700. I'm just gonna be honest with you. But as I explained then, I take up a little more than 18 inches, and the little kid that's beside me, she takes up a lot less than 18 inches. So there's always gonna be more seating than what the maximum seating is required. It's not uncommon for districts to have to determine that they want larger spaces in your own building. Your hallways, your cafeteria, all that stuff was over-designed in space to accommodate those 1,000 students. KD doesn't set a seating requirement. The only place they do that is that it has to seat the minimum number of students that you're designing for. So in our case, it had to seat at least 1,000 students because that's how many students. That's really all KDE cares about. From KDE's perspective, they don't care if you can see graduation or not. They just need to be able to see the students that you are designing the school for. Go back to your answer. Yes, there has been no final decision made. That really doesn't happen until the bid day, bid documents, and you will have approved, in essence, the design for the bid package early on for the earthwork moving package. That had to happen regardless of any of the projects. We talked about that very early on. And then you'll have basically a bid package that's your outdoor facilities. And then you've got a bid package that's going to be the performance gymnasium. So at any point in that time, between those last two bid packages, you could choose to accept one or the other, both combined, or neither.
So I think the concern that I have is that we remove a layer of documented accountability for the decisions that we're making as a board. Without that checkpoint, and if I remember correctly, when we went from originally saying we wanted to spend no more than 20 million to now looking at 42 million, we talked about all these extra checkpoints along the way to help us to ensure that we're being responsible stewards of the resources that we have, and we're building facilities to really meet the needs of our students. And the fact that now the last checkpoint we have is financial capacity. And yet as a board, I'm concerned that we would max financial capacity on one facility or one part of that facility, and we lose all the other needs that we have in the district. And so until that's paid off and we're back to a new bonding potential, and there's 5 new board members sitting around this table having to clean up the mess that's been made. So I'm not opposed to building a performance gymnasium that meets the needs of the community, and it's something that we can be really proud of. I think every piece of this project is really important to our community. It's significantly important. And I'm not negating that at all. But what I'm not comfortable doing is giving up that layer of accountability and that checkpoint. I'm just not willing to do that. So I think what that does is put a tremendous amount of responsibility on the 5 of us to make a decision that, as you said at the graduation, a bunch of old folks who may or may not be here when the end result occurs and we're having to try to pay for this thing over the next 20 years or 30 years or whatever we end up bonding it at, somebody else is going to be facing that, not us. So I feel like if we take it through the KDE approves it, let's go with it. If they don't approve it, then we've got to back up and punt again and figure out what does this district really need. But if we adopt this resolution, and I've got a feeling it's going to pass, given what I found when I arrived at the board meeting tonight, but we just have essentially, we're just saying we don't need that layer of accountability because we're going to do what we want to do and we know what's best. So I am not in favor of adopting the resolution. I am in favor of us doing everything we can to ensure that we build the facilities that we know our district needs. I'm completely 100% in favor of that. But I am also very much in favor of taking it through the KDE for the checks and balances and the accountability.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yes, sir.
Please.
I have some other concerns that kind of are making me lean to being negative on this too. And one of those is that nobody knows what the bonding bid process is going to bring us. It's a best case scenario with inflation, with shortages, with increased prices and shortage of labor and whatever. This has been true throughout the years. This is not my first rodeo on building school facilities and going through a bid process and finding out that the bids sometimes come in too high and you just have to refuse them and bid it again. Or the people that get the bids are not really suitable for the project because of previous known experience with that group on another bid project. I would like to see us do and get the most use of our money that we're going to spend and we're going to pay for the next 20 to 25 years, however it's set up. And I am, given the current way that things are going, we're not going to know what we're going to have for sure. You can look at $41,740,000 as our bond potential. Say the bids come in, it may be 39, maybe 37. As we get to other phases, it may drop some more. I think Brother Jerry has been through this too. This is not his first rodeo. And I think at the last project you all worked on, you did run into some problems with financial markets and the economy at the time that you were trying to finish up and came up short. And that's one reason that we're at this point right now. What you had to start with would have been sufficient, but by the time you got to a certain point, you came up short. With the way this is structured so far, I see it as we're putting a lot of money because of a set of circumstances that's been presented by the KDE about funding athletic facilities and extracurricular activities with our building funds. And this is the last opportunity for us to be unrestricted. Well, this seems to be adding on to top of the unrestricted. We're taking a layer of insulation out. We put an extra layer in when we got construction manager, so we'd have a check and balance. We added an extra layer. Now we're taking the layer out. And I don't know that the way it's stated that the KDE is going to be instructive to the process anyway. We don't know what they're going to approve and not approve. I don't know what their criteria is. I'm not sure they know.
From the criteria standpoint, even though this removes KDE from the process in essence, they're still there, they're still willing to help. And I am still obligated to design to the design criteria. I can't come and design for you something that meets or does not meet their criteria or exceeds their criteria. So I can't design a space that is larger than what KD would have allowed you to design anyway. So I'm still beholden to those rules. That's what this House Bill 678 has in the depth of it, is we can't go and do things that we couldn't have done anyway. All it does is say that. And this came about, as I'm sure y'all are aware from some of your other projects, the slowness at KDE of getting the processes approved and trying to get to bid before the interest rates continue to creep. That's the whole reason here from their perspective, is to remove that layer of bureaucracy, not oversight. So they've left them there. I was talking with James up at KDE yesterday for another district. He's there, he's willing to help. We're working through some issues, getting some of their input, but I'm not waiting the 6 months to get the letter now that it would have taken to get through their bureaucratic process. I can call, have the conversation, hang up and proceed. But I'm still very much beholden to the design criteria.
Be sure that KDE is not the only one in the state government that is slow about processing.
Understood.
Been there and done
So,
that too.
I don't know that that helps ease any minds, but I just want y'all to know that we're not out to design you something that we couldn't design you anyway. Because when we started this process, we were beholden to KDE. So, and we're still there.
Like we said before and said in other meetings, we had meetings to discuss what we really needed. And I'd hate to see something that the community came out, although there was a small turnout. That doesn't stop it from being a community involved.
And that's why,
Numbers don't really account for a whole lot when you're trying to involve the community. You have meetings and they voice an opinion and it's almost 100% unanimous that we need 2 or 3 of the projects in there. I'd hate to see one of those get cut out because we didn't have the money.
so,
If you spend a considerable amount more to make something, one part of it bigger, that money could be spent to keep from having to cut a project at the end out. Am I not correct on that?
that is true. By oversizing it, it is costing more than if it was the minimum requirement. Doesn't, so, but at the end,
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
by oversizing the gymnasium, it's costing more. A 3,000 seat gymnasium is going to cost more than a 1,500 seat gymnasium. Oversizing it does cost more than the minimum requirement. And he's giving you a minimum requirement that you must meet. There is the stipulation that you can use your locally identified space to make that space larger. It was the intent that we designed under. Still meets the requirements of KDE because we're utilizing that locally identified programming space to do it. So we've not exceeded what we could do, but it's simple math. That 3,000 seat gymnasium is going to cost more than a 1,500 seat gymnasium because it's bigger. But this is the same situation that we talked about before, why we are putting these bid packages together in such a way that if the numbers come in higher than we've estimated, the board has options on each level to make decisions. And then they have the option to accept either doing all the package or portions of the package. So they don't have to, at the end of the day, you don't have to build a gymnasium if the numbers come in so high, or you could build a gymnasium and not build the athletics. I don't think that's the way the board is going, because I think from our understanding, everybody's on board with the outdoor athletics. It only comes down to the gym. So from a design perspective and working with Trace Creek, we're holding it as its own egg so that it'll bid separately, because it'll have its own set of contractors that won't be out here working on the baseball, softball, and football, soccer facilities. There'll be a completely separate set of contractors than the ones working up here on the gymnasium. We're doing that for multiple reasons, but one of them is so that you could bid it separately.
May I interject here? And I respect all opinions. And we talk about a 1,500 seat gym. When we talk about oversized gym. Well, 1,500, we were all present at the graduation, and there was more than 1,500 people in there. By far more than 1,500 people in there. So if we're not going to build a gymnasium to meet the needs, which the 2,900, 2,800, 2,700 would do that, then why build a gym at all? If we don't, there's just so much in the community. I get asked almost every day, when are we going to push ground? When are we going to get things started? Because there's some excitement out there. And there's some excitement about, we've had only one class graduate from the existing high school, and that's when we had it outdoors that time. If we build a 1,500 seat gym, then we're going to have to make some adaptations. Are we going to have people in classrooms and be watching it on film up here? What are we going to do? And I'm sure with the ingenuity that we have within the school system itself, something can be accommodated. But I think I'm hearing this. We can go forward with this, and then let's say as we go forward and you all come up with, these are the plans to do what we're asking you to do, then at some point we look at the monies, and if the monies aren't there, then adaptations can be made before they get started.
Yes, we're building in those adaptations so that we're giving you the option to what we call the alternates, to pull pieces and parts of the gymnasium. I'll just pull a piece of that out. One of the things that was asked for in the client meetings was the idea of the stage system. That's an alternate. It'll be pulled out to itself. If the bids come in low enough that we can afford it, we can add it in, or you can keep it out. The second heights of bleachers isn't something that has to go into the project initially if you didn't want them. They could be kept out of the project, and you could add those back in. So we're giving the board as many options as we can to get it to the price point that the board feels comfortable with. That's our goal as designers, is we want to design you the facility, but we also want you to feel comfortable with what you're spending. In order to do that in this crazy market means that we've got to give you a bevy of lists of options that you get to pick from. Just like if you were building a new house, do you want the, A+ kitchen? Do you want the B kitchen? Do you want the C kitchen? It's all going to fit into that same space.
If you want the A+ kitchen, you're also going to have the A+
The
money.
A+ money. So because we know we've got a set amount of money up here, we know that's what the budget is. We're working those numbers constantly to the point that we're making concessions in our own design. I'm taking things that I considered that I wanted into your design of your project, and I'm rethinking a few of those things to be more budget conscious. I'm talking to our contractors. Where are we having hard lead times? What is costing more than normal? Where can we save some money? So we just bid a project for Scott County, and we realized that, as strange as it sounds, a drywall wall right now costs more than a block wall does. That's never been the case before. But because of lead times, because of other issues, things that aren't produced here, have to come in to build a drywall wall. Fasteners is where it's at, screws. It costs more to build a wall out of drywall and metal studs than it does to build a CMU block wall. So today I met with structural engineers, and we made those changes. We're taking where we had planned to do some drywall, to do some finishes higher up that we felt would save us money, because of steel and material cost, we weighed the cost, and it makes more sense to do it out of CMU. So we're taking CMU all the way up 42 feet in the air. We're making those changes as we go. At this point, again, you've not spent any money other than our design fee to get to the point of the bid. At this point, and I'm going to say it I'm going to say this one, maybe I shouldn't. You've gone so far into the design that pulling out now really is not going to save you any more money than if we take it all the way to the bid. Because the only fee that you've got is our fee, and we're so far along in the project that what we would save in cutting the project now isn't a noticeable amount to take it to bid. So we might as well take it to bid.
I feel like we've deviated away from the resolution at hand. We've gone way far away from the resolution at hand, and the concerns that I have about the resolution are not related to whether we should or should not. I think we've collectively agreed at what our community needs, and we want to move forward with it. But what I'm not comfortable with is eliminating that layer of accountability and the checkpoint that is in place that Mr. Stoll has referenced from the very beginning, the very first conversation we had about the construction process and how many checkpoints we as a board have along the way to ensure that we're being responsible stewards of the resources that we have and we're making good decisions. That's the issue that I have with this resolution. It's
The
not
thing I
the
think
project.
about the resolution too is, he referenced checkpoints because those were things in existence at that point. I just really don't believe that our legislature plus the governor would have endorsed this bill if it didn't have some credit to it. And that it would be something that local communities could take advantage of to do some things special without that extra layer. I have all the confidence in the world in our architect. I have all the confidence in the world in our lawyer, with the board itself, in making the decisions necessary to reflect what I feel like the community wants. And I just feel like this is a very important consideration for us to take and to pass.
Yes, ma'am.
As I was trying to understand this House bill, and I relied on the Kentucky Board Association's emails that they had sent, and I was trying to keep up with it. And I would like to clarify, I have not discussed this resolution with anyone. So what I'm saying is based on what I have read through the Kentucky Board Association, and my understanding of why, and I cannot remember the legislator's name that brought this, put it on the floor for a vote. But my understanding, it was to help schools that were in projects, just as Brad said, because of our market and our volatility that we have going on, that it was a way to keep projects moving and to help with time. And having gone through some of these processes, I know we have financial checkpoints and all that have to abide by KDE. You still have, I guess, a grade book, that's what it's called now. You still have a grade book. You don't have any choice but abide by that. The architects still have, as you have alluded, as you have said, still have. What it does eliminate is the third checkpoint of KDE. And it can be slow. And we know that, as many other government agencies are. So that brings a question to my mind with this discussion. If at any point in our project, if we came within something that became controversial, or we wanted more information, or we wanted that checkpoint to be in place, could we ask KDE to give us some guidance on that checkpoint? But we wouldn't maybe have to do it for everything we're doing, because it slows us down. And any of us that have been through projects, and everyone sitting here has been in some way, we know that it just takes more time. So I think the intent of this legislator was to say, we have projects going on, we have capable people, we do have checkpoints that will help us to keep the projects moving, possibly save some funding because of the market being as it is. And so he proposed this legislation and it passed. So that's my understanding through my doing my research, I have not spoken to anyone in this room about it. Mr. Stoll and I haven't spoken about it. It's just that was what I understood as I read it. So I still have that question. Can we still go to KDE if we have, I think we've gotten off the track, as you said, it may be really specific to Garrett County in one particular project. If we still, when we get to that project, have concerns, can we ask KDE to be that third checkpoint, but maybe not with everything, every step along the way?
So the difference between the decision to, and I'm going to share an opinion here, right? The accepting this allows you to move forward, but you could stop at any moment and ask KDE. To not pass this means you have no choice but to ask KDE. So passage gives the board some flexibility. Choosing not to pass it does not give you flexibility. So to Dr. Lamb's position of wanting the checkpoint, not passing it says you have the checkpoint every time. To your side, if you pass it, then you could use the checkpoint, but it would not be required. I think I'm saying that correctly. And I believe Brad suggested a second ago, he's already making those conversations with KDE now in another project with another district.
All right, we've had a lot of discussion. We ready to vote?
Question.
All right, all in favor, let me know by lifted hand. 3 in favor, all opposed, no. 2, the motion is passed with 3-2 vote. All right. Item B, approved fidelity performance bonds for financial staff.
Each year, we ask you to approve a performance bond for Ms. Coffey and Ms. Naylor. This is a standard process. Those have been attached for you. My recommendation is that you approve this fidelity performance bonds for our financial staff.
All right, you've heard the recommendation. Do I have a motion?
So,
Dr. Lamb made the motion, Mr. Hurd seconded. Any questions or comments? All in favor, let me know by lifted hand. All board members were in favor. Item B is approved. Item C is to approve pledge of collateral agreement with Farmers National Bank.
Every 2 years, our bank has an obligation to us to assure us of how they would take care of any problems that occur. Farmers National Bank provides collateral in a sum of 103% of what's in the bank. So what you're doing tonight, what I'm recommending that you do is approve this pledge of collateral agreement with Farmers National Bank to secure the dollars that are in the bank.
Thank you. You've heard the recommendation. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. McQuarrie made the motion. Do I have a second?
second.
Mr. Hurd seconded. Any questions or comments? All in favor, let me know by lifted hand. All board members were in favor. Item C is approved. Item D is to approve the middle school door project, BG5.
So you cannot close a project out until you complete the BG5. By completing the BG5 or approving the BG5 today, we will complete the project. We did not spend $12,000 on the project, so that would be returned to the general fund. My recommendation is that you approve the BG5 for the GMS door project.
All right, you've heard the recommendation. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
McQuarrie made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Hurd seconded. Any questions, comments? All in favor, let me know by lifted hand. All board members were in favor. The BG5 is approved. Item E is to approve a memorandum of understanding with KDE for Garrett County ATC outreach coordinator.
So with a lot of effort from a lot of people, particularly Wendy Congleton, who's here tonight, Garrett County is able to say for a second time in the last 8 weeks or so that we're about to embark on being the only district that provides an outreach coordinator for our special ed students here at the ATC. This money would be provided from KDE, an amount of $145,000 a year for 2 years, zero cost to the district. My recommendation is that you approve this MOA with KDE for the Garrett ATC Outreach Coordinator Pilot Program.
All right, you've heard the recommendation. Do I have a motion?
I move.
All right, Ms. Davis made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Hurd seconded. Any questions or comments? Okay. All in favor? Please know by lifted hand. All board members are in favor.
Thank you for your work.
Yeah, great job.
Excited.
All right, then that brings us to item F, which is to approve a job description for the ATC outreach coordinator.
So since you're allowing us to move forward with this, we have to have a job description in place. That's been provided for you to review. My recommendation is that you approve the job description for the new MOA position.
Okay, hope you've had an opportunity to look that over. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mr. McCray made the motion. Do I have a second? Ms. Davis seconded. Any questions or comments? All in favor? If you don't lift your hand, all board members were in favor. The job description is approved. Item G is to approve additional special education teacher for CDR for the 22-23 school year.
We're continuing to have a referral increase at CDR, and they will be in need of a fourth position. We have no guarantees that we can fill that position, but without the position being there, we obviously cannot. So my recommendation to you is that you approve this additional spot for the 22-23 school year. It'll be funded through ESSER 8RP IDEA funds and through special ed general education funds as well. So it's not really coming out of our general pot, but it is money that would be used very, very effectively as long as we can fill that slot. If we cannot, we'll make the adaptations that we have to. But my recommendation is you approve the additional special ed position.
All right, thank you, sir. You've heard the recommendation. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Dr. Lamb made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. McQuarrie made the second. And what you alluded to in describing this to us, I understand these positions are hard to find. Is that?
So in a conversation with Ms. Congleton today, we have 650 vacancies in the state.
Special ed teachers, 63 personal psychologists that have not been filled.
Thank you. All in favor, let me know by lifting hand. All board members were in favor. The item G is approved. Item H is to approve emergency certified teachers for substitutes for the 22-23 school year.
Because of shortages in substitutes, as you're all aware of, if we would like to use an emergency certified teacher, we have to have the board's permission. So tonight I'm asking for that permission, and I recommend you approve emergency certified teachers as substitutes for the 22-23 school year if we haven't hired them for regular positions.
Thank you. All right, you've heard the recommendation. Do I have a motion? Mr. Davis made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Hurt seconded. Any questions or comments? All in favor, let me know by lifting hand. Mr. Hurt, are you in favor?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. So all board members were in favor. Item H is approved. All right, that brings us to item I, and it's time for us to go in executive session to discuss the superintendent's evaluation. So do I have a motion to go out of regular session into executive session? Mr. McQuarrie made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Hurd seconded. All in favor, let me know by lifting hand. All right, we are now in executive session. If you want to take a few minutes, if anybody needs to take Thank you very much. Thank you, any of you that might still be joining us on social media. I apologize for the delay, but we had some important discussions, and I'll entertain a motion at this time to come out of executive session and into regular session. Mr. McQuarrie made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Hart seconded. All in favor, let me know by lifting hand. Thank you very much. All right, this is a special call, even though it's one of our regular meetings, but since it's not the regular meeting, it is called a special meeting, so we can only discuss the things that are on the agenda. And item J on the agenda is to approve the summative evaluation of the superintendent. And if I may, I read this to the board, and this is a result of the board's getting to me as chairman of the board, how they scored the superintendent on each of the 7 standards. The Board of Education of the Garrard County School District has completed the annual evaluation of Superintendent Stowe for the 2021-2022 school year. The past year has been a challenging yet positive one for the education in our district. All 5 board members have served at least 1 full year and have been able to observe and to be a part of the successes achieved this year. The evaluation focused on 7 standards of performances. Superintendent Stowe received a rating of exemplary in the areas of strategic leadership, resources leadership, and influential leadership. In the areas of instructional leadership, cultural leadership, managerial leadership, and collaborative leadership, he achieved a rating of accomplished. The board will be working with Superintendent Stowe over the next few weeks to develop goals for our district for the 2022-2023 school year, and we look forward to working together to make our district a success. I believe all board members have said they approved this summative statement, and I'd like to have a motion to adopt this statement going into this file.
I'll make a motion to adopt.
Dr. Lamb made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Hart seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, let me know by lifted hand. All board members were in favor. Item K is consideration of the superintendent's contract. I have been in discussion with not only our finance director, but also with Mr. Stowe. And as a board chair, I'm recommending a $10,000 raise for our superintendent effective July the 1st, 2022. And I'll entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Mr. Hart made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. McQuarrie seconded. Any questions or comments? All in favor, let me know by lifted hand. And all board members were approved. The summative report and the consideration of the contract with a $10,000 raise effective July the 1st is approved, which brings us to item 6.
May I make a statement before?
Oh, please.
And the statement I want to make is that whenever we hired Mr. Stowe, he did not accept the salaries. He took the lower salary, and he's denied all raises prior to this time. So this is not something that just came out of a whim along the line. This is something he's more than earned for his performance during the time he's been here. So I just wanted everybody to know that is something that he has not taken the raises given to everybody else. And so he's sacrificed. And so we certainly appreciate it.
And as our financial situation may improve in the future, we hope to be able to do more. Anybody else? We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, let me know by lifted hand. Thank you very much. We are adjourned. Thank you folks for joining us if you're still here on social media.